I had mentioned in a recent video that Trump might get a bad result on election night itself. He didn't in the late hours of the 3rd, but by a few hours later, in the early morning of the 4th, Michigan and Wisconsin had flipped, which when added to Arizona, put it at 270, and that became the bad news I was describing via Mercury and Venus from the 3rd house, indicating a message that said the numbers do not add up, you've lost. Now it is looking like it'll be a narrow victory for Biden, either at the exact 270 needed to win, or else perhaps in the 290 range if he is able to come back in Pennsylvania. Trump is predictably crying foul in an ultra-Trumpian style, consisting of mendacity and hypocrisy. He wants the vote count to continue in Arizona where he's behind, but in Pennsylvania he wants it stopped because he's ahead. Right around now, the moon is leaving Gemini and entering Cancer, the sign of Trump's 12th house. And it's not going to be good for his cause, because by late tonight, early tomorrow morning, the moon will enter into the degrees of his T-square, which he never likes, and therefore will correlate with new developments against him, or else perhaps the continuation of the current trend, which isn't good either. The moon then continues its journey through Cancer tomorrow, and by Friday afternoon, it will cross through the late Cancer degrees, triggering the Saturn opposition in Trump's chart. This will either make the 270 more solid, or it might be Pennsylvania going for Biden, but either way, it will not be good for Trump. If you recall the video I made the day before the election, in which I talked about 3 scenarios, starting with the most optimistic all the way to the least, but even in the most optimistic outcome, I drew a green graphic to show the election was unlikely to be resolved until mid-month. My reasoning centered on the Mars direct station, which comes next week on Saturday in the early hours of November 14th. This doesn't mean the situation cannot be resolved until then, but it does signal that we are unlikely to see any kind of full election certifications until at least next week. And by certifications, I don't even necessarily mean in a completely legal sense, but at least in the sense of putting it completely out of Trump's reach to play any of his shenanigans. The Mars station is in degrees that are very irritating to him via the sesqui square to his ascendant. Note that this planet at birth is square his zenith midheaven, so that intense situations like this will easily correlate with a negative blow. It's transiting through the legal house, so he is agitating to get in the courts, but he has a very flimsy case. The main thing is that this isn't going to get better for Trump, because the triple conjunction in Capricorn, by individual planet and collectively as a force, is opposing his Saturn-Venus, and this is going to stop him dead in his tracks. If you add the degrees of all 3 planets to make a traveling planet tree of force, right now it is directly opposite his Saturn, and as the days pass toward the second half of this month, it will start to be closer to opposing his Venus, and this will not end until at least the middle of December. But by then, with Saturn and Jupiter moving out, Pluto by itself is just beginning to oppose his Saturn and work its way toward Venus, which takes it past inauguration. This is not good for his cause, and I mention it here for those who worry that as time passes, things may get better for Trump. They will not. I have to say I am disappointed in the closeness of the result, but a win is a win. Of course, the worst part of it is that the absence of a blue wave probably hurt the possibility of getting the Senate, which at the moment is looking like anything from grim to impossible. I had said earlier in the year the Senate looked good because Schumer has a good chart, but since I don't have McConnell's time, it is totally possible his chart would be even stronger if he has a supportive ascendant. I will continue to hope Trump's oppositional astrology might bring in further damage as we move later into November and into December, including perhaps a better Senate outcome, but we may have to accept that getting the presidency any which way is as good as it's going to get.